Welcome to my video cast, Foresight with Evelyn Morales. Today I have an interesting guest, very special, Dr. Ellen Ochoa. Ellen Ochoa is a veteran astronaut who joined NASA in 1988 as a research engineer. She was selected to be an astronaut in 1990, and she went to space, actually becoming the first Hispanic woman to travel with the space shuttle program. She flew a total of 4 flights with the space shuttle program, and I had the privilege to work with Ellen, closely with Ellen, to develop tools for the robotics operation activities. Ellen was also named the 11th director of the Johnson Space Center. She was actually the first Hispanic to be selected in that position, and the second woman for Johnson Space Center. Ellen was born in California, grew up in California. She went to get a degree, a bachelor's degree in San Diego State, from San Diego State University. She also has a master's and a doctorate degree from in electrical engineering from the Stanford University. She's also a co-inventor and has in her portfolio some incredible patents. Ellen was also named, after she retired from NASA, she was named as the vice chair of the National Science Board of the United States, who establishes the policies for the National Science Foundation. Ellen, I want to welcome to my video cast and thank you for having this conversation with me today.
Thank you, Evelyn. It's great to see you, and I certainly fondly remember all of our training sessions, getting me prepared to use the robot arm in space.
Yes, we did a lot, yes. A lot of tools, a lot of hours. But thank you again for accepting the invitation to talk today about a very important topic regarding the workforce of the future in engineering and science fields. So, as you know, and we know, the data is telling us really that science and engineering employment actually in the United States is increasing, is growing. We have new occupations in software development, in computer science, analytics, in mathematicians, new mathematicians, economics, all these fields in engineering. And that has grown very rapidly. We have, I think I read about 5%, so over 7 million now employment in that area. And now there is also a, a lack of women and minority getting into these fields. And they're underrepresented to about, I think I read about 29%. So what, from your view and your experience now, what is the current climate and of education in the science and engineering overall in these fields, the trends, the needs, so that we can understand a little bit what is happening?
Well, definitely overall, there is a greater need for people who have studied STEM, and really across the board, you know, everywhere from people with, you know, post-secondary training that can go into jobs that maybe don't require a 4-year degree, on all the way up through, you know, academic researchers. And we see that these industries, there are a lot of industries that actually didn't used to require STEM skills that now do, just because of the prevalence of technology that didn't used to exist. And that's one of the reasons that's driving, you know, this need going forward. And another factor is that the US, you know, for a long time, we were really the model for how much we invested in science R&D, science and engineering R&D. And as you look across the globe, other countries are really coming up fast. And particularly you think about countries like China and South Korea, and the amount of their GDP that they're investing has really increased quite rapidly. So you know, that's kind of a mixed story, right? I mean, in many ways, the cooperation that you can have globally can be good for the whole world because of, you know, driving solutions to problems and things like that. But it's also a competition for talent and a concern for just our own national economy and what will be driving it in the future. And will we have, you know, the talent and all of the infrastructure needed to really, you know, maintain that leadership that has been so important to our economy.
Hmm. That's important. I mean, that's interesting that you mentioned that, you know, the need for, I mean, well, investment. It has definitely, we need to do more of that. But they also, what you mentioned earlier about having that title or requirement, right, from employers or from the positions to be more technical. So
Yes,
even
right,
important. So that's
right.
something that, interesting. So I think that the delivery of education, right, may need to definitely evolve then to create a better connection between the theory, the application, the applicability of it, because I think that's where some of the students and getting into these fields, they don't see. They don't see
Right.
themselves. They don't see why, you know. And so that will definitely enhance innovation and keeping yourself in that field, getting, so the integration of research and education, so that all the students have access to this discovery base and problem solving is important. So how important is that, or what, based on what you know, you know, for these fields?
Well, I think where certain programs, and often they're extracurricular programs, have succeeded in getting more people interested in STEM, and I'm thinking more students starting, say, at the middle school level and high school level, what they often provide, number one, is hands-on activities, right? And so that the students can really have a sense of, you know, what does it take to, what kinds of tools do you use when you're trying to investigate something? You know, how do you form the problem? How do you collect data? What do you do with it? And it's quite abstract if you're just sort of, you know, looking at a textbook, but if you have a chance to do that yourself, it really brings it home in a greater way. And when I say hands-on, it's not always physical tools, it can be coding as well, you know, as you are well aware, but something that has, you know, a specific issue that you're investigating and that you are helping to develop either the tools or the sort of the experimental setup that will help you learn more about it. So that's one way to get students interested. And I think it really taps into their creativity, taps into their curiosity. They see that oftentimes progress is made by a team of people working together. And I think in many cases, that's not how people think of scientists and engineers. And they don't realize, okay, what it takes is creativity, curiosity, teamwork, and this gives them that sense for that. Another usually aspect that is really important in programs is some degree of mentorship. You know, it can just be even high school students mentoring middle school students, or it might be professionals who are coming to a high school or a college talking about careers and career paths and what has been important. I know it was really important for me when I went off to college. I didn't start out in science or engineering at all. And I really had not taken the kinds of science classes I should have taken in high school. I had not taken chemistry, I had not taken physics. I just thought I wasn't interested in it. And so I kind of, for me, I got interested in it through my math classes, but it was really important when I sat down with a physics professor and he described to me some of the careers that you could have if you majored in physics. I literally had no idea. And so you can imagine, you know, you're just not likely to select going into a field if you can't really picture what it is that you do with that, or, you know, what's a day on the job like? So I think that kind of mentoring is really important too.
And you know that now that you mentioned that, it will be beneficial to have a better understanding, and maybe I'm tapping here into marketing. You know, how do we really in that connection of
Yeah,
what you do with these skill sets in these fields, physics, mathematics, and the application of it, or the different jobs, and having that more graphically represented for students.
right.
Because at the end of the day, once you know that that exists, that there is a connection, that you can, again, see. Remember, for me, you know, everything graphical is extremely impactful, right? Even for training, as you know. So having that for students, that they can see that. And then obviously, once you get into giving them projects that they have a way of doing and analyzing and getting a solution, even if it's small or a portion, something tangible. So I think the investment really in that should be extremely beneficial. So you know, my background, right, in computer science, and I've done art, so I have to put that agility and adapting the knowledge, continuous learning. So I never stop. It was always learning on what the new tools, what new programming, you know, tools and
Environments,
to develop
languages, yeah.
languages. I mean, it was a continuous learning throughout my life. So what are the current skills now? If you think about even what I did, what you did in this area, do they need to have? What are those like significant, important skills that you need to have? And remember, I always looked at the traditional science, like we have psychology, we have the biology, which many students go to more than engineering and computer science, which we have. So tell me about those skills and necessary.
Well, I don't know if I'm qualified to totally predict where all the jobs are going to be, but I can certainly tell you some trends. And you know, one of the big changes, I think, for a lot of jobs and careers now, especially as you think about research or moving technology forward, is the fact that we can deal with large amounts of data, or as people refer to it, big data, right? So you can collect a lot of information, and oftentimes you're using machine learning, and or you're just doing analysis maybe on a very powerful computer to understand what the data are telling you. And so, you know, I've talked to people at universities, and they say, so for example, when we are hiring in a new professor in biology, we don't want just a biologist, we want a computational biologist. And we want a computational chemist. And we want, you know, people who are learning the tools to deal with the large amounts of data that are available. And it's not just to, you know, get answers to questions. You can actually even expand the range of questions that you can ask when you know how to deal with large databases, or pulling it in from a variety of different sources. So I only see that trend continuing, right?
Right.
So the more that you can get introduced to that in your education or early in a career, I think that the more useful that you can be in a variety of different areas, even if that sort of wasn't your initial entree into that field. Right. And then, you know, there's a lot of skills that people don't necessarily think of when they think of science and engineering, but which we know are important. The ability to work in a team, and a team that is diverse. It may be multicultural. It certainly will have people probably of different ages, different genders, different racial and ethnic backgrounds, different countries, you know. That is so common and becoming more and more common. And to really get the most out of that team, you need team members who feel comfortable in that environment and sort of understand their role. When you're working on a team, you need to be responsible for sort of personal excellence, right? The tools that you bring to that team. but also keeping in mind the larger goal of what that team is trying to accomplish, and then realizing, well, part of what I need to do is look and see what the team needs, and try to bring that to the team. And of course, we deal with that all the time in space exploration. It's actually a large team. Sometimes people just think, of the crew that's in space, right? But we know it's a much larger team that's really working together. And of course, on the International Space Station, multilateral, multinational, multicultural. And so that is something that I certainly never really thought about when I was going through school. So it was kind of on the job training. But the people who are comfortable, not only comfortable, but understand sort of their role in a team, I think it is hugely important.
And that's a great point, because the more that we can expose at a very small level, even students for that, the adaptability and working in teams obviously always goes a long way. But you mentioned something very important too, the integration. So
Yes.
we talk about integration and we don't talk enough. And I remember there was, we can have the skills of the computational analysis and the skills of understanding, because I'm a biologist and understand the theory, but also then the integration of that, which, like you say, will formulate you a new range and rainbow of questions. But then applying that obviously for a solution is another thing, and integrating sometimes all the tools that are coming from different teams.
Yes.
It's like crazy. And now you add into that COVID-19.
Right.
And then
Right.
now we're trying to do all this virtually, but we have to, because now we're everywhere, and we should be everywhere, to make it more appealing for the workforce even. And how now the new generation is, obtaining and communicating between themselves is through this social media and this technology. So they need to be able to come together and pull this solution and integrate it in a virtual way. So that's a new skill. And of course, I live in that world all my life, 20 something, the virtual world. So everybody's like getting confused, and I'm like, okay, this is normal for me. No, but I understand that's a really need. And now, from your perspective, I mean, why are students not selecting this field? Why are they, why they don't come and come to study these science and engineering fields? Why are they not getting into these fields as much as we would like to? What is happening?
Well, I think there's a variety of reasons, and I'll just name some that, of course, other people have done a lot more in-depth studies on this. But certainly, part of what I mentioned earlier, particularly as younger students, say middle school or high school, kind of sometimes have a view of scientists and engineers that I don't think really portrays what those people are like in real life. And that really the qualities that are needed are creativity and curiosity, maybe the desire to solve a problem or a challenge, or interest in discovering new things. And a lot of times I think they just picture people kind of working alone in a lab. And often, of course, the way they're portrayed, maybe either in science books or sometimes through, entertainment, is often male, often white male. And so if you don't really see yourself in that role, you don't even think about, oh, maybe this is something that I could do. And so again, thank you for doing this video cast, because, obviously one of the ideas is you've got to see people like yourself. It made a huge impression on me when the first class of astronauts that was selected for the space shuttle. This was before it was even complete, right? But NASA was preparing for it. It was the first class to include women and to include minority astronauts. And it was not long after I had changed my major to physics. So I had kind of just gotten into the science area. And even though I didn't think at that time, it was a little too early for me to be thinking of it, of astronaut career, it made a big impression on me that this was now a career that was open to people like me. And then like 3 years after that, the space shuttle flew for the first time. That was my when I was in my first year of graduate school. That was a big deal. 2 years after that, Sally Ride flew in space, first American woman in space. And that made a huge impression on me. And not only the fact that she was the first American woman, but I could see some things that, other things that we had in common. She had been a physics major, like I had. She had gone to Stanford, and at that point, I was at Stanford in graduate school. And I think it really took seeing those connections for me to even conceive of the fact that, well, maybe this is something I could do. Because I think before that, I would never have ever pictured myself, you know, being able to do what she was doing. And so the more that people can see that, you know, a whole variety of people can be involved in science and engineering, space exploration, astronaut corps, any of that, you know, the more that they're likely to be thinking about that earlier, you know, taking the right courses and setting themselves off on that path.
Yeah. And yeah, and that's incredible. And it takes me back to the idea of maybe having a visualization of, because not everybody, you know, not all the students, not young professionals, we have the opportunity to see that path like you saw it, like more,
Right.
you know, tangible, I mean, more closer, but maybe have some way of representing that really visually for all and women, and to see that relationship. I'll think of that, because there is something maybe there that I can tap into. But yeah, that's great. I know that we need to see ourselves represented. You know, we need to see the opportunity. And so now that you know, you retired from NASA in 2018, I think so.
Yes. Yes.
You went to work as the vice chair for the National Science Board. So tell us a little bit about the work that you did there, and the discoveries, the challenges, opportunities that we need to be aware of, because that's very important for the enhancement of these fields, and investing, you know, opening the voice to more investment from our country, actually, from the US into those fields.
Right. So actually in May, I was voted the chair of the board. So I'm now the chair of the National Science Board. And so we have two roles. One is that we set the policies for the National Science Foundation. And of course, that's the federal agency that's really involved in investing in fundamental research, both basic and applied research, across really a whole wide range of disciplines. And so, you know, hundreds of universities, principal investigators, academic researchers receive those funds, as well as other research organizations. And so we set the policy for that. And then we have a broader role, which is to provide independent advice to the president and to Congress on just the nature of the science and engineering enterprise in the country. You know, we work with the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics to put out reports that show trends. And then we try to make sure that the right people hear about those trends and understand the importance to the future of the country on that. So we recently put out a report called Vision 2030. And it was really talking about, you know, what do we think the country needs to do to remain preeminent in science and engineering 10 years from now in 2030? And we kind of developed a roadmap that has 4 main areas. And one of them is delivering benefits from research. So trying to focus a little bit more on taking the results from research and being able to push them a little bit farther so that they can be picked up by another federal agency that's more of a mission agency, or companies, could be startup companies, could be larger companies, but trying to make better use of the research. another big part of it, and really one that underlies everything, is developing STEM talent. And we talk about how we've really been complacent in our country about ensuring that we're developing domestic STEM talent. And we also have benefited in the past of attracting the best and brightest from overseas, and that we want to continue to do that as well, because both of those have really made the U.S. what it is in terms of, you know, innovation and discoveries in science and engineering breakthroughs. So a lot of it is focused on the talent. And then we looked at expanding the geography of innovation. And in this case, we were talking about the US, where you want to make sure that it's not just 2 or 3 main areas in the country that are benefiting from the investment in R&D, but you have the ability, no matter where you live, to have a quality STEM education and opportunities in the workforce with STEM skills. And then finally, the last part of the roadmap was fostering a global science and engineering community, because there is so much going on, as I mentioned earlier, around the world in investment in science and engineering. And what you'd like to do is be able to have global interaction, learn from each other, and particularly when you look at issues and challenges and problems that affect people all around the world, you know, how can we work together better to move that forward? But also sometimes it's just exciting science breakthroughs, like the image of a black hole that really took advantage of telescopes around the world, for example.
Oh, wonderful. No, those are incredible, you know, initiatives, and not initiatives, but areas that
Yes, that we want to continue to follow up on.
definitely. Well, that's fantastic. I hope that we continue to progress in this area in terms of, you know, exciting the young into getting into these fields. And I think that these conversations and your explanation to it. So I want to thank you really for, again, for taking the time today. I know we're coming to the end of our interview, but you have been, your insights into this have been very important and impactful. And I hope this goes beyond for to many people for their learning into what is needed. So we need to get more excited into supporting these areas.
Right.
So, well, thank you, Ellen. You know, thank you for spending this time with me. And, you know, if you want to say something to my audience.
Well, thank you, Evelyn. You know, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I talk about it in a variety of ways, of course, for a variety of different audiences, but it's still really important messages, I think, to get out, and the more people that can, you know, hear about it, think about it, understand how that might impact their future, I'm always happy to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. You don't do this every day with your ex-trainer. Or
That's right.
So this is great. Well, thank you, Ellen, and I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay, thank you.